This is a quick video to show how to create rules in Fluency using the behavioral rule system. So one really easy way to begin is just search for what you want to look for. So I'm just going to search for Zoom events. And then what I can do is I can then go into the table view and I can grab, let's say, time zone. Let's say I want to write a couple rules on time zone. So at this very last icon here, I can click it and it brings me into the event watch configuration. And so now we can give a name to the rules that we're going to create. So we just call it Zoom rules, Zoom time zone rules. And the description will be Zoom rules on the time zone field. It doesn't have to be on the time zone field, but that's where we're going to write them on. Now notice the search I had before for the events was copied over. And I can make this much more complicated. I can add filters to it. In other words, I can add facets. I can use the ability of doing the tables. But right now, I'm just going to focus on something very easy. We're going to look at the Zoom rules, and we're going to create a couple of behaviors. So then we're going to basically look at the time zone field. And the key that we're going to work on is the user email. So in Zoom, the user email is the username that we're used to. And notice that it's already saying that I'm going to compare it to the username field. And that's what we want. Now, I could make this into a timeline. I say, you know what? Show this activity on the timeline. Now, I got to first grab what I want to talk about. So I want to show the username. So I'm going to do this user email. And I want the time zone. So now that I got it, I can create my first rule. So let's use the first occurrence and say, let me know the first time somebody logs in from a time zone. So in the fields we're interested in, we've already got the username, but I'm going to go ahead and grab it anyways for completeness. And so now what it's going to say here is the first time I see the username time zone pairing together, and it's not something that I've had before, then tell me about it. Now, my learning day window is going to be 10 days. The longer it is, the more it remembers. And it's important to think you might want to make it huge, but at the same time, you want to forget things. So a good example is, let's say a person goes to China and they come back on that trip. You don't want it to continue to remember China. So we're going to make that rule 10 days. That looks good to me. And I'm actually going to give it the GOIP tag. So even though it's the time zone, I'm going to give it a tag and say, this is related to GOIP. Another rule we want to make is go back to that person. So they're going from one country to another. And so the time zones are changing. But I want to know when the person came back and yet there's still two time zones being used. In other words, maybe someone hacked their system, right? So we want to say, hey, tell me when there's multi time zones. And what is it? So I grab cardinality. What cardinality means is that it's got to remember one of something and it's going to use that to count it. So in a deck of cards, there's 4 aces. So when we look at it, there's 13 cards, right, with 4 different sets. And so the cardinality is 13, right? So in this case here, if I go from China to the United States and I'm in New York time zone and I'm in Beijing time zone, that's going to be 2. And if I go to another place, let's say I go to London and I'm on UK time zone, now I've got 3. So I want my cardinality only to be 1. I don't expect a person to be changing time zones. And so the field I'm interested in is time zone. Now, why not user? Well, because I've already got the key of user. So it says by user, count the number of time zones. And so any time zone, if there's more than one time zone, and let's make it hours good, let's make it in a 12-hour period of time. So if I appear in multiple time zones in a 12-hour period of time, I want to know about it. So there you go. So now I've saved two really simple rules. I've got them going. I can save them, and bang. Now my system's looking for those events. So it's really easy to create rules. So remember, I start at the events and I search for what I want to find. Then I go into the table. I clicked the very last icon, the charting icon, and that brings us to the Event Watch bucket. And in the Event Watch bucket, I basically determine the key. I then map the fields to the field names, so I normalize the names. And then I go into the Behavior tab and add my behaviors. It's that simple to start writing behavioral rules.